Welcome to the official Lawyer Minds podcast. Lawyer Minds is an ever-growing ecosystem for all the resources modern lawyers need. As the official Lawyer Minds podcast, we'll discuss everything from the latest happenings on the website to industry news. Get ready. Here we go. It's time to dive into the minds of successful lawyers. Here are your hosts, Tad Thomas and Mike Campbell.
Hello again, Mike.
Hello, Tad. How are you, sir?
I'm excited about this podcast.
Me too.
All right. So, it's every so often you have the cases that come into your office that you wake up in the middle of the night, not in cold sweats because you're worried about something, but you wake up in the middle of the night because you're like, I can't wait to do this in this case. I want to, I jump right in. I want to draft this motion. I have this idea for a question and a deposition. There's so many, cases that just really get your juices going. And what we're going to hear today is a case that against Amazon that, frankly, I hope they win this case. But Carrie, Goldberg, and Naomi Leeds have this case going on against Amazon, several cases. On essentially assisted suicide. That's what it sounds like.
And it's amazing because here's a firm in Brooklyn, New York, that's taking on these tech giants whose, income is that of a number of countries, right? And they have all the resources at their disposal. And you got, this is truly David versus Goliath. This is what gets me going about the law. Justice is supposed to be blind, and it's frustrating sometimes, but when you're in the courtroom, you're on a level playing field, or at least that's the way that it should be. And Naomi and Carrie are showing that to be true.
Yep, we're going to get right to this one because I'm so excited about this podcast. So here we are with Carrie Goldberg and Naomi Leeds. The Lawyer Minds podcast brought to you by Gavel Video. Some companies do videography, but Gavel Video does high-quality cinematography to highlight your firm's successes. Also brought to you by Legal Insights, providing expert digital marketing for law firms. And finally brought to you by iLitigate, trial presentation software for trial lawyers by trial lawyers. And now to our program. All right. We're on the podcast today with Carrie Goldberg and Naomi Leeds of Brooklyn, New York. Thanks for joining us, ladies.
Yeah, we're happy to be here.
So first of all, we'll talk about how I found you all in the Law 360 article and your Amazon case, which I think is really interesting. But just doing a little work researching your firm. You've been around since 2014. You're in Brooklyn, but you really handle some cool cases. So tell us about your firm and your practice, Carrie.
Sure. So we started in 2014 after I'd had a problem finding representation when I was going through a crisis with an ex, and I lost control of images that I had possessed that he was then blackmailing me with, and I couldn't find an attorney that could deal with this level of stalking and crazy. And after I got through my ordeal, I had gotten this kind of involuntary education into how limited the laws were in New York State to help people whose intimate images were being circulated without their permission. And so I started this firm because I suspected that other people were in the same boat. Up until then, I'd been doing like guardianship law for incapacitated people. So nothing of the sort. But very immediately I realized that not only were there no criminal protections, but companies like Facebook and Snapchat were really, really involved in the dissemination of images. And there was no way to hold them accountable because of this law that went to effect in 1995 called the Communications Decency Act, Section 230. My immediate thought was, why are these, multi-billion-dollar platforms trafficking in the nude images of innocent people? And it's because they have no accountability to their users.
So how did you start your firm? You just decided one day, this is what I'm going to do? Yeah.
Yeah, I worked at the nonprofit, the Vera Institute, and I had never worked at a law firm before, but I realized that you can pretty much start one for a couple $100. I didn't have savings. I cashed out a couple weeks of the vacation days that I'd saved up and bought some letterhead and URL, and it was off to the races. I mean, it was terrifying as all hell, but that's, it's a lot of people think that it's so expensive, and you can probably attest this, to start a business. But when it comes to law practices, we're the inventory. We already have the expense was getting the law degree.
Right. So Mike and I've started my law firm twice. Mike has started his own law firm as well. So we're simpatico, and hey, let's just go do it. So Naomi, tell us about your practice.
I started here in 2021. I graduated from law school in 2020. I went to Fordham Law. And I told Carrie that I was extremely interested in these cases against, more of the big tech defendants. She said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah." And this was the first case that I started working on. And it was really just laying a foundation, seeing if we could file a lawsuit.
Yeah. So tell us.
Oh yeah. Naomi came to the firm. She like I found it really difficult to find our first job. And so Naomi came to the firm, and I said, we don't have a permanent position, but I really need help on these I'm developing this case. I don't know if it's got any traction, but we might have claims against Amazon relating to them selling a suicide product. But our one client who's come to us, she doesn't have, her son purchased this product, he died, but his medical death certificate says that his death is inconclusive, and nobody will co-counsel with us in Washington State, where we need to file this case, until we can prove that his death was the result of this chemical that he bought on Amazon. And so Naomi just went on this painstaking crusade to find this young man's blood, get somebody to test it. It involved getting a court order and finding a medical lab that would test it, and all this delay. And in the process, I was like, okay, I can't live without her. And so we easily found a way to find a permanent position for Naomi. And she's just been my gift, my magical gift in litigating these cases, which have increased from the one case.
So this is the Washington State case, and you got other ones. And I guess just to summarize, Amazon was selling on its website a product called sodium nitrate that, if you Googled, and we're not going to talk too much about it, but people could find online how to commit suicide, and sodium nitrate was one of the ways to do that. Amazon knew it, still sold it, and you all have clients that are relatives of teenagers and children who bought this and committed suicide.
Yeah, and to add to your explanation, Amazon was specifically the recommended marketplace to go find it, because there were no restrictions on the sale, because you could be 14 and make an Amazon account and order it under just a first name, get it delivered right to your house in 2 days.
Mm-hmm. And you could use the gift card your grandma gave you for Christmas. You don't have to have a credit card or anything like that. So it's really, really, this product is cheap. It's $19. Amazon would prime deliver it, and just made it really easy. I will correct one thing though, it's sodium nitrite.
Nitrite, okay.
Yeah, sodium nitrite is a different product, but the product that we're really concerned about is sodium nitrite with a purity level of the items that they sold to our clients were in the 98-99% purity level, where there's just absolutely no household use for it. So it's people are like, well, what's next? Are you going to try to get Amazon to stop selling rope and knife? Well, there's a lot of household uses for those things, but the intended use that this has for households is suicide, and it takes a very small quantity of this chemical, which comes in powdered form, mixed with water, and a person is dead in about 20 minutes. And in the over 50 cases that we've where the families we've talked to, there's been one survivor. So this is not like a substance that you can, anybody, you can't like attempt.
Like experiment.
Yeah. A lot of people who attempt suicide or experience, it might be a cry for help. It might be not their intention, but and we have far too many clients where the story goes that the kid took it and immediately called for their parent, called the police, called 911. We have all these 911 calls and could not be saved. Like the police would get there in time, they'd get them to the hospital and they'd still be, alive, but it was just too late. This stuff is too deadly. Yeah, it's too deadly. And then there's no warnings on it. So the warning is, that it's poisonous to aquatic life. Yeah. Or if you get this in your eyes, flush them out. Or call, if you ingest it, call your physician. As though there's time to call your physician. Yeah. And so there is an antidote to it, but the labels and the Amazon websites don't talk about it. And so by the time an emergency responder is in the house, it's too late for them to even learn about the antidote. And then we also have, and it's just been very difficult to get the message out about this form of suicide, so that then, which we need emergency responders to know about it, so that they can identify the very, very specific symptoms. Like it's the symptoms of somebody who's taken sodium nitrite, or I'm not going to go into it unless you want me to, but it's called cyanosis. Right. Visually very obvious.
So let me ask you this. So I guess let's give a real brief overview of Section 230. Let me ask you this: does Section 230 prevent? Is it a bar or potential bar to recovery in that particular case?
It's one of our only cases where we did not get a motion to dismiss on Section 230 grounds. However, in Amazon's answer, they did include it as an affirmative defense, but we did not have to deal with it. Like a lot of our cases against big tech relating to child sexual exploitation and other product liability things do invoke Section 230. This one does not, because we're not suing them for anything a user has done to another user. We're suing Amazon for their own negligence.
And so, broadly speaking, Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act essentially creates immunity for the content that is hosted by mainly social media companies, Facebook, Twitter, et cetera, so that the idea was, when it was originally written, we want these sites to be able to grow, and we don't want to put the burden of the cost of monitoring that on the company itself. So how in the Amazon case would that Section 230 come up, or in the suicide cases?
So one of the ways that we explained that Amazon was negligent was that a lot of parents whose children died left comments on the product pages, and to warn other people, to warn kids, to warn their parents, this is deadly product, or to warn Amazon, because it was extreme. Amazon's customer service system was very botched when it came to this. They just refused to take it down. And so parents were desperate for this not to happen to other kids. And so they would submit,
why are you selling this? This isn't a curing salt, those types of comments.
Right. And so like, that's the closest thing that we have to, and that's not the basis of the lawsuit, but it is like one of the facts that shows that there was this foreseeability that this product was going to be continued to be purchased by people for suicide. So that's really the only thing where there's like a public, a user submitted publication.
I think too, this is different from other products that Amazon sells. This is like the product. This is a product that's a first party product for Amazon. Is that correct?
That's correct.
In the Scott case.
In the Scott case.
Right. In the Seattle case, which means for your listeners that Amazon had a wholesale agreement with the product manufacturer company in India, and Amazon possessed and owned the product. Amazon was responsible for the photographs, the product description, all the customer relations, and shipping it. And so they had the inventory. It was just at their regular warehouses. But they had a lot more control over the product than in the third-party selling relationships, where the manufacturers and sellers are using Amazon basically to help them get in front of customers, but the companies still own their inventory and are shipping it.
And what's interesting about this is what Carrie just mentioned about the product page is Amazon has tons of rules and regulations about what needs to be on a product page in terms of the pictures and the warnings. And they violated almost every rule. I mean, when you have a product, let's say, and you need to have a minimum of one picture that shows the entire product. But in the case of the high media sodium nitrite, so if the bottle is this big, it literally showed this much of the bottle, the top third, and conveniently left out any information about the product. Even the little warnings that they had were not even in the image.
Yeah, so like some emergency responders would go to the scene, see the product, and get enough information to know it was purchased on Amazon. Since there's no adequate warnings, it might look on Amazon, and then there wouldn't be any further development of warnings on the product page.
Yeah, the best thing is that it said laboratory use only, and then they proceeded to deliver it to residential addresses to people who were 13, 14, 15.
People who bought it at on December 30th at 11 p.m. In a house in Ohio.
Right. Because that's where a lot of laboratories do their work.
That's where laboratories are, like in 3-bedroom homes in Ohio.
Sure. So what is your legal theory then in the Washington case?
This is just a straight up negligence case and a failure to warn. And then we also, because our client tried to resuscitate her son, or both cases. So that, by the way, that Washington case is two different families. And we now have another set of Washington cases with two different families. But so we have negligent infliction of emotional distress because in both of those cases, the parents interacted with the dying bodies and tried to save them. But what was really striking about that case was that in the Ruth Scott case, after Naomi confirmed that it was sodium nitrite that caused the death, we then could sue. But we had been in contact with Amazon and their attorneys for 10 months, 9 or 10 months before we sued, and said, it appears that this product killed our client's son, and we want to just alert you to that. We're getting, we want to just give you the opportunity to please take this off the market. We actually didn't think we would even file a lawsuit, but then they refused to take it off the market. And so after we sued, and there was an article in the New York Times, we then heard from the parents of Tyler Molman, and Tyler was a 17-year-old kid in Santa Cruz, senior in high school, incredible athlete, drum player.
Weeks away from graduation.
And he purchased the product 2 weeks after Amazon's outside counsel sent us a letter saying that they were not going to be removing the product because Amazon would never be able to be held liable for selling it. And
he actually said that in the letter.
yes, I mean,
Wow.
in sum and substance, they said that they quoted a Texas law that said that a third party is not liable for somebody's suicide or self-harm.
Mm-hmm.
But it turns out now, we're a year into that lawsuit, and we've been winning the motions. We,
Right.
won the motion to dismiss.
Right.
Amazon has tried to appeal it twice and has lost both of those appeals and is now.
They tried to appeal it once. They're on their second appeal, and we hope they'll lose their second appeal.
Oh,
Right.
God. I don't want to jinx that.
Wow.
I guess I'm so pleased with our opposition that I just already gave us the win.
Now, are both the appeals, is those in Washington or are those somewhere else now?
It was Washington. So the first one was just trying to get the judge to certify the question for the appellate court. And then she said no. And so now we have to go argue in front of a commissioner as to whether that commissioner will certify it for appeal.
Well, tell me what other kind I saw on your website, you have some other interesting types of cases. What other cases do you like doing, Carrie?
Well, we, we represent everybody from, we obviously, represent cases against the biggest tech companies in the history of the United States, of the world. But we also represent, people against their ex-boyfriends, people who are being stalked and harassed, sexual assault cases. We filed a case a week and a half ago against Grindr, where a young kid downloaded Grindr at school, and then he was matched with predators. And over the course of 4 days, he was sexually assaulted 4 times. And we, in our research, discovered how much of a recurring problem it is with kids downloading Grindr and having their first coming out experience. This is particularly common for people that live in communities where it's not safe necessarily to come out.
Mm-hmm.
And so they, or maybe in their family it's not safe. And so they come out through Grindr, but Grindr's for adults. Yet Grindr knows and even markets to kids. And that case, that's the case that is likely going to involve Section 230, where
Right.
Our defendant's going to say, well, this isn't our fault. This is the fault of the users, and this kid shouldn't have downloaded Grindr. But when it's so foreseeable that the product is used this way, then I don't think these tech companies should get a pass.
Right. Do you all do any lobbying or legislative efforts?
We do. We've spoken to Congress a couple times and at the White House, usually about Section 230 and
Right.
the need to reform it. We were at the Energy and Commerce Committee about 2 months ago talking about our cases against Snapchat. We represent 9 families whose children all purchased fentanyl-laced pills off of Snapchat. They all thought that they were buying like an Oxy or a Xanax, and instead these it's just such a common thing where
Right.
these, you can actually buy these pill presses on Amazon. And then sometimes they're cut with fentanyl to make them more addictive.
And sometimes they're 100% fentanyl.
Yeah.
Right.
And so we represent 9 families who, kids as young as 14, these are not drug addicts who overdose. These were kids that thought that they were taking
An
Something-
oxy.
Yeah, something that just was not what they were taking.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep. Kids just being kids doing dumb stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I would never have survived.
That's,
So specific to this case, we've been working with lawmakers in New York and in California to, draft bills about sellers not selling sodium nitrite in more than 10% purity.
Yeah.
And not to anyone under 21. So there's a lot of movement.
And we're on the plaintiff steering committee for the social media cases against TikTok, Meta, Snap, and Google relating to like the child addiction to those products and the eating disorders and suicides that have happened as a result.
So if somebody wanted to find you guys, where would they go?
They would probably be best going to our website at cagoldberglaw.com. But if they want a real treat, they should find us on Twitter.
That's where it gets spicy.
That's
for sure.
that's where I am. That's
pulling it out
account
and
that I actually get to handle for myself.
I'm pulling that out as soon as we get off this podcast.
That's right.
So
That's the one that gets me in a lot of trouble. Depositions and stuff.
Well, thank you all so much for joining the podcast. You're doing great work. So happy for the families to have you guys helping them. So look forward to hearing the end result, and best of luck to you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
So I know you probably feel this way too. There's a special place in my heart for people that have their own firms that walked out of a job and just hung a shingle and said, I'm practicing law and I'm starting my own thing. And then, for Carrie, here she is. She did that, 7, 8, well, I guess almost 10 years ago now. But here she is with a nice firm in New York, going against the giants of the tech industry, going against Amazon, one of the largest companies in the world, on such a great case. I just wish them the best of luck.
Oh, it's amazing. And I mean, it's one of those things, especially when Naomi was talking about her path to Carrie's office, it's like, this is all, Carrie getting the firm, launching it. This is all like some sort of documentary or movie, I mean, this is a totally unreal. Yeah. And, it is just incredible the work that they're doing. So absolutely, I'm rooting for them.
Yeah, they need to maybe have Ray DeLorenzi from our prior podcast to talk about, talk to them about all the things that they can do this. They're obviously already, talking to Congress and working in New York on legislative changes to get this fixed. These are holes in the system, where these companies can get away with things like that and just, kind of throw up their hands and say, we're immune for any content that's put on our site. So, we don't care. And that's just wrong.
And one of the things that we discussed after we stopped recording that, and I think is in that Law 360 article is that Amazon does bundles, and Naomi and Carrie were telling us about this. Right. And what they do is that they suggest other items to buy. And they were suggesting with this sodium nitrite, an anti-vomit medication, so you couldn't induce vomiting, and I think a book on suicide. And that's, I mean, boy,
it's infuriating.
Yeah. And I mean, look, that stuff here's the thing. That stuff is still for sale on Amazon if Carrie and Naomi aren't out doing this. That stuff is still for sale. If they're not on Amazon. And I mean, how many people do you think look at this case like this and think, there's nothing we can do about this. They're not going to take it down. Just an incredible testament to the courage, strength of those lawyers.
That was one of my favorite podcasts. I really hope they knock the ball out of the park on that one and just have a good result for these families.
Yep.
All right, Mike. Good podcast.
Yep.
Talk
Absolutely.
to you next time.
See ya.
That wraps another episode of the official Lawyer Minds podcast. Please consider subscribing to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. Explore the other content Lawyer Minds has to offer and engage with us on social media. Your feedback on the show and ideas for future shows is always welcomed. See you next time.